Thank you, Reverend David. If you want stories on him, you can pay me later. I have a few. You know, it's rare in a religious science church that you would hear, do I need to move this? That you would hear people talk about the dark side, because we're kind of known as the church that talks about the bright side. You know, like when you give your attention to what you want, that's what you manifest. So we give our attention to happy, joyful thoughts, and we manifest those, right? Is that what we teach? Yes. There's something that gets, what, pardon? It does work both ways. And we have a dark side. And so I'm really happy to spend a little time talking about the shadow, because the shadow is really in proportion to the light. There's a balance that happens there. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Carl Jung is really the father of shadow work in modern therapy. He called the shadow the unconscious dumping ground of all of our undesirable characteristics. It's the place where we just kind of like hide it in a corner, in our interior corners, and pretend it's not there most of the time. His favorite story that he would return to over and over again is an ancient story about artesian waters. And in ancient times, the artesian waters would bubble up into a spring that was life-giving, and of course life would surround those watering holes, because that was the essence of life. And people would come and get their water and drink and bathe and, you know, enjoy a full life because there was water there. But of course, in time, what would happen is that the people would see an entrepreneurial opportunity and they would fence off the water. And then they would start charging the people to come partake of the water. And then they could raise the prices because they had the corner on all of the water. And the waters didn't like this. The waters were really unhappy that their free spirit was being in some way boxed up. So the waters left and went someplace else. And of course, the greedy people who owned the boxed-in well didn't even notice the water was gone, because they weren't really about the water in the first place. And the people were afraid to tell them, I'm not getting water anymore, but I'm still paying you money. But some enterprising people went off and found the new well that was bubbling up not far away, and just left those people behind. They're like, we have our own water, and it's free, and it's available, and it's like God meant it to be. So everybody goes over there, and they start filling up their jugs, and life begins to thrive again. Guess what happens? History repeats itself, and some people see the opportunity, and they box it in, and start charging the people, and then the waters go, no, and they move. And so it is throughout history. Water does find its own place. And whatever attempts there are, and certainly in our culture, there's a huge effort to bottle it and contain it and sell it back to us. Whatever that's about. And Carl Jung loved this story because it's really a perfect example of what the shadow side is. It will bubble up. We have within us, and just like the ancient yin-yang symbol, we have an equal portion of light and dark. And they are always operating in tandem. And so to the extent that we diminish the dark side or try to pretend it's not there, it will show up, and it'll come out sideways. And you can remember times in your life when something came out sideways. You're like, what? Why did I do that? It's probably some shadow stuff that's been repressed, that hasn't had an opportunity to see the light of day, that just pops out like a well. And it bubbles up somewhere else. And that's really what the nature of our shadow side is. How do we get it? We come with it, first of all. We come with an sort of innate balance between light and dark. And what happens as we grow up, as we're little kids, as we start to move in the world, we get shamed for things that we were not supposed to do, that may have been inconvenient for the adults in our life for us to be acting out in a particular way. Or it may have even been something that was not intended to shame us forever, but was intended to keep us quiet for this minute. Don't say that in front of grandma. And so we were like, don't say that ever, because we're kids and we don't know. So we start stuffing things in this hiding closet in the back of our psyche. And whoever wants to do house cleaning in that psyche, you know, it just like gets more and more filled up, kind of like my basement does sometimes. It's more and more junk goes in there, and it's never looked at again, but they become the decisions that we then make other decisions based on. So if I'm not to act like that, maybe I'm supposed to act like this. So we try to pick the opposite and become that. Is this sounding familiar? Yeah. I've been there, I know that. That there is, we start acting out of our perceived idea of what will get us the goods in the world. You know, we're after the goods all the time. The goods are the love, the appreciation, the likes, and that which turn into the salary and the car and the spouse. And you know, we're about the goods. We like, bring it on. We want the goods. So we behave in a way that will get us more goods. And then many times it comes out sideways. This other side of us that's been like pushed back here, right? And what you see is that the bigger the light, the bigger the darkness. There are so many examples in our culture of people who have huge light and this huge dark side. Tiger Woods, can I just say, is one of those. Larry Craig, senator who's, you know, been a huge anti-gay proponent, found in a bathroom in the Minneapolis airport. It just goes, it kind of goes to Jimmy Baker going to jail. I mean, you can probably help me with more and more examples of people who have this huge light and huge presence and huge work in the world, and their shadow side comes out and really diminishes anything they could be on the positive side. We do that too. Maybe not on national television. Maybe some of you are, I don't know. I don't know this community that well, but we do it at whatever level we're going to live large on this side, we're going to have a dark side on the other side. And here's the trick. The dark side isn't only the bad stuff. It's all the unacknowledged stuff. So also in our shadow world is the potential that we know ourselves to be. The good can be hiding in there too. And it can come out sideways too. And it's just there. It's not, you can deny it all you want, but it doesn't make it go away. It's still just there. So here's the good one that has really shown up in my life in the last few weeks. I just completed my doctorate, which is why David was so emphasizing Dr. Linda, Dr. Linda. Thank you. Thank you. And my doctorate is in ministry at the Pacific School of Religion, and my project is about the launching pad as my ministry. And the film that we're showing this afternoon is part of my thesis. So I did a non-conventional thesis, and the film is part of it. And so it's been this big project. I've been at it for a number of years, and all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, everybody's calling me Dr. Linda. And I'm not quite in those shoes yet. It's kind of like, so that my first reaction, because you know the young adults in my community were like, "Doctor, hey doctor," and I found myself doing self-deprecating kind of jokes about it. Yeah. Kiss my ring. You know, I have all these like that because I wasn't comfortable with it, and I kind of stopped and went, well, actually, I want to get comfortable with it. Self-deprecating is not where I want to stand. On the other hand, I don't want to be boastful. I don't have a place to stand. So what comes out is this shadow side of me that really has not filled these shoes yet. I have the title, and I'll get there, I'm pretty sure, because I want to get there. But I'm still like trying to find my ground. And I think that's really, for me, an example of the positive side of this shadow shows up as I'm trying to step into who it is I'm claiming. I've already claimed the space. I want to stand here. I want to be this. But it's kind of not there yet, you know. There's a balance point, and I guess that's the part that's interesting to me is that if we're living in this yin-yang of the positive and the negative, there is a balance point, like a teeter-totter. And you can go heavy on the positive side, and you know, when you're like a teeter-totter, then the dark side will bounce up. And the thing, I think for me as a young adult, I thought that the balance point of the teeter-totter would be like living a life in grayscale. That would be the boring part, because it would be just like nothing. And I liked the highs and the lows and the bouncing part. And I think now that that balance point is actually the most dynamic spot, because it's in small movements, if you're standing on a teeter-totter, that you are keeping the balance and you're feeling the movement in both directions. And there's actually enormous life in that balance point. And I don't think I knew that for a long time. I am liking finding the balance point and not ignoring one side or the other side. And occasionally going in for the bounces, because I still like highs and lows. I don't really like the lows, but I like the highs. And so I'll occasionally bounce, but finding the center point is really what spiritual practice is about. It's like, where is the center point where I stand fully engaged in all of who I am, acknowledging this side, being my God self, and being like on a link to divinity from the highest to the center of the earth, that center line. That's what the center point feels like, and it's good. I think young adults, and this is the people that I work with all the time. By the way, my husband and I do live in the house with them. We live in an intentional community. So we live in the house. Reverend Barbara's been there. Reverend David's been there. So we live with young adults. And you may think that's crazy, and many days my husband does. I like it. But I get to watch the incredible experience of them finding their way. And I'm really gratified at this point, 4.5 years into it, that there are young people who have found their way. They've launched, is what we call it. And they're out there getting real jobs, making real money, not being baristas anymore, and finding their way. They're getting married, some of them are having kids, and you see them finding their balance point. And as they're getting there, and right now we have a house full of young people. We have one mature young people, but most of them are in their early 20s, and they're bouncing really high and really low. And that's their job, is to find their way and to feel fully into what's possible. What can I be? What can I do? Is there a limit to this bounce? How high can I go? And then to feel the other side, and we get it a lot because our door is open, and it's a pretty large community. Besides the people who live in the house, there's 60 or 70 young people around Berkeley that are sort of move in and out of our presence and come to our services and things like that. And so when something happens that's traumatic, many of them just know, go to the launching pad. Like, I don't know what to do. They're in college, they have a roommate, the roommate doesn't want to hear about it, and they've just had a bad breakup, or they've just had a fight with their parents, or whatever. They'll knock on the door. Sometimes 2 a.m, they'll knock on the door. And somebody will open the door, hopefully not me. Somebody will open the door, make them a cup of tea, sit down, pray with them, just be available to them. That's what living in that house is about. That's the commitment, is that you are there to be a vessel for the community. And they know that. So I get to experience a lot of that shadow side popping up because they're not skilled at standing on the balance point. That's later. I'm not sure how skilled we get later, but it's not that skill's not there for most young adults yet. So I've had a lot of experience of watching the sideways part of the shadow popping out when you least expect it, and it just shows up. It shows up when you're, one of the jokes I've heard about living with young adults, I hear a lot of them, is, you got a young woman who's like figuring out who she is, and you turn to her and say, would you mind taking the garbage out? And her response is, why does everybody say I'm fat all the time? That's what shadow work is about. So we most get to own that when we're willing to look at it. Really, the task for us is to be willing to open the closet and look at it. It does not stand well to the light of day. So just being willing to see it and own it, first of all, requires immense courage to do that, but it's also how we heal. It's beginning to look at it and to have the maturity to look at it without acting it out. You don't have to look at it publicly. You can look at it privately. But it is, you can open the closet and begin to examine, especially when we have those moments when we've done something that's like, where on earth did that come from? That's an invitation to look at Where did that come from? Whose voice was that coming out of my mouth? Usually mom or dad, just if you want a clue to where to start, that's usually a good place to start. And when did that happen? And I know for me, I can go back in that feeling, attending to that feeling. I can go back and remember little 7-year-old Linda, you know, who was getting her hand slapped for getting in the cookie jar, and I walked away feeling fat and ugly, and, you know, like, that carries into today's, why did you say that to me? Do you know what that thread is? Yeah. Oh, quite well. That's the work. That's really the work of bringing it into the light. Why do that? Why do that work? Because that's what brings us to the place of being able to stand on that balance point. It's as we examine what's old and in almost every case does not serve us. It's things that at some time may have kept us safe. It may have even kept us alive. And it's not to be shamed. It's to be acknowledged. If you start from a point of view, and just try this out in your mind if you think I'm kidding you. We are all, always, all the time, doing the very best we can with what we have available to us in the moment. Every single moment. So those things that we made decisions about when we were little, we may have made those decisions in order to stay alive. You know, we may have made those decisions in order to keep balance in our family, in order to allow life to keep going forward, or to protect somebody else. We may have made decisions for all the right reasons that if you looked at them today with an adult mind, you would go, that was not smart. But we were doing the best we could at the time. Likewise, those of us who have huge issues to forgive with our parents, with our loved ones, with our grandparents, because of the ways that we were treated and the ways that we have had to spend all this time doing all this work because they did that to us. If you stop and look at it, they too were doing the best they could at the time with what they had. They were always, we are always, and they were too, working in the context of the life circumstances that had brought them as far as they got. If we knew better, we'd do better. That's human nature. We will do the best we can at every moment in time. But what I know to do now, I didn't know to do when I was 6. And what I could do now I didn't even have the framework to understand that. And yet, I'm losing myself here. Am I back? Am I back? Yeah, thanks. Lost my train of thought. What we know now serves us now. And what being willing to open the door and look at the unexamined stories, the boogie bears in our dark closet, allows us to do is to know more and to do better. That we can make shifts as we let go of and appreciate the things that we've held in shame, the things that we've been unwilling to look at, the things that we've just shoved away. There's healing present there. We're not doomed to live it out, but we are required to give it some space, to look at it, to acknowledge it, and then it doesn't need to come out sideways. It just flows away. One of the things that will help is ritual. So I've just, as you begin to do this work, think about, are there, you see, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between acting it out and doing it. You know, so ritual actually accomplishes a lot because it reenacts without acting. What is the ritual that will allow me to let go of this? And it's one of the things in our centers for spiritual living, and I'm sure you do it here. We do burning bowl ceremonies. We do releasing ceremonies. We light candles. We blow out candles. We do things that are symbolically represent what it is that we are letting go of. So you can create a little ritual for yourself as you examine those things to say, I'm going to lay this down, I'm going to burn this, I'm going to bury this, I'm going to let this go, I'm going to let the earth take it back because the earth can handle it. Whatever those things are, rituals will help. And prayer will help. That's the place where our teaching stands tall in doing shadow work, is that we know that we are infinite beings. If you're new to this center, you may not know that yet, but you will soon with what we teach. We are infinite beings. We are made up of the same particles as God. We are made of the essence of God. It's who and what we are, and we're here to be that and to shine that in the world. And as we know that and claim it, the shadow begins to dissipate. So it's not from not looking at it, it's after we've looked at it that we can claim it and say, "Ooh, and I'm still God. The dark side's God, the light side's God. It's all God. And I am all of those things." It's who we are. Let's pray. Just recognizing the infinite presence of the One, that which is the source of all life, all goodness, beyond words. We call it life, we call it love, we call it grace. It's freedom, it's wholeness. I call it God. That which is all that is present right here, right now, fully embodying every molecule of this place. God is everywhere, all the time, right here. And I am part of that. I am part of all that is. It is embodying me. I am an extension of that God energy, right here in time and space, acting as a particle of God. And that's not just true for me, that's true for every person in this room, every person in this city, every person on this planet, and indeed all sentient life and other planets. We'll take it as far as it is, because God is limitless. We are all expressions of that one life, and we are infinitely deeply connected to each other, infinitely connected to all of life. And so we take this moment to simply steep in that awareness, to let ourselves know again that we are expressions of God, nothing less, and that all that we are, the shadow, the light, all that we are, is God. There is nothing that is not God in any particle of our psyche. There's no place that shame is needed, for all that sits in that dark closet is simply God waiting to be released into a new form. And to that I say yes. I say yes for every person in this room, that as that closet door opens and we begin to look, that we release the shame, release the sadness, the fear, the rage, all of the stuff that has been hiding in the background, and claim more and more wholeness. As we see it, we bless it. We let it go. And we know that there is life that blooms beyond what we can currently fathom. And to that I say yes. I claim that future that is unfettered, that is whole. For each of us, so much goodness awaits. I claim it, I know it, I see it, and I call it done. And I give thanks for it. So much thanks for it. I let it go. And so it is.